Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to take a look back and reflect on the eclipses of 2022, and we're going to do so for your rising sign. So this is kind of like a retrospective horoscope. The idea behind today's talk is to, as we are approaching a new year, and we've just crossed the winter solstice if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a good time to reflect back on where we've been in the past year. We did a previewing recently of the eclipse cycle that will move into Libra and Aries in the summer of 2023. I guess it'd be the winter if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. And so I thought, we should take a moment to reflect back on where we've been and what we've learned. So we will be looking at where the eclipses have fallen for all 12 signs today across two signs at a time, the house axes for two signs at a time. So Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sag, like that. And we will be looking at the house topics that have been active for you in 2022. And I think it's a good time to do so because I think it's really nice to, at the end of a year, to reflect on where you've been, what you've learned, how you've grown, where you started off and where you've come to. It probably hasn't been an easy year for a lot of people. For other people, it's been the year of your life. It's somewhere in between for a lot of people. But it's still so valuable to look at where have those eclipses been? Where has the river of karmic change, learning, and growth been flowing? Eclipses have long in astrology been associated with major turning points in people's lives. And I think they're the most popular of the content that I make. I don't think there's any that get more views than, like, say, a major planet changing signs like Pluto going into Aquarius or something, or eclipses. I think that people pay attention to eclipses because they change our lives. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to reflect back. We're going to look at the dates of the eclipses to remind you of them. And I'm going to give you some tips for sort of doing memory work that could be valuable right now. And then we're going to look through all 12 signs and what houses have been active depending on your rising sign, what topics have been active by virtue of the houses that the eclipses have fallen in your birth chart. So that's our goal for today. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your comments. It helps the channel to grow. Really appreciate you guys doing that. Transcripts of the daily talks that I give can be found on my website if you ever want to read one or print it off and highlight certain pieces of it. Especially, that's something that I've done and always appreciated when astrologers do if I'm studying something. To a lot of the way that we learn is to hear something and then to read and reread something or re-listen to something or whatever. So I try to make those available because it's something that I always appreciate myself. So anyway, don't forget that right now we are also in the midst of trying to raise the support of 1,608 backers by the new year. We are around 800 at the time that I am making this right now, which means we're about halfway there. That means we need a huge wave of support with just around 10 days left to go. Until New Year's Eve, we're going to be banging the drum, trying to meet our goal. If you appreciate this channel, a lot of heart and soul goes into creating the content every day. You support this channel when you visit the Kickstarter. You can find the link in the description of this video or the comment section below. Throw in $5 if this channel, is a support in your life. Throw in $10 or choose a reward when you donate and pick up one of the readings that I make for you, or your horoscope reading for the year ahead or something like that. We try to make some rewards so that we're also giving you something nice in return for supporting the channel. Our big goal in the year ahead for the Kickstarter is to build an affordable reading service so that people who otherwise couldn't afford readings will have an affordable option. This will employ some of our best students and give them the ability to make money and give people affordable rates, get them experience, get people budget-friendly astrology readings. So it's a big goal to pull that off. We need as much support as we can before the new year. Thank you to those, almost 800 people or whatever who have already donated. We really appreciate it. Don't forget, when you donate, you can pick up also all of my online courses, my year 1 program, my year 2 program. I have 6 total programs that I offer. You can get all of them for 50% off. You can bundle them together. When you bundle 4 of them together, you get them. The price of the course goes down to almost 75% off. So really good deals. I only run them this time of year. So make sure you take advantage of that before New Year's Eve. Help us reach our goal, support some good things in the world of astrology. Really appreciate you guys. All right. So first, what I want to do is I want to look back at the eclipses of 2022 in order. So let's just revisit them before we break them down by rising sign. And I'm going to give you some tips for how to do some meaningful reflection and memory work with them as well. So first of all, the 2022 eclipses in order start on April 30th. There was a solar eclipse in the sign of Taurus on April 30th. And that was our first major eclipse of 2022. Then we went on to May 15th and 16th. And you can see right here, there was a lunar eclipse in Scorpio that came through on the 15th into the 16th. So that was eclipse number 2. Remember, new moon, solar eclipses always happen on new moons, lunar eclipses on full moons. So you go to next, we're going to go to the most recent eclipses, which happened this fall. We spent a lot of time talking about those really recently. So here we have a solar eclipse, which was on October 25th. That was eclipse number 3. And then eclipse number 4 took place on November 7th into the 8th. And that was a lunar eclipse in Taurus. So you can see those 2 eclipses right there. So what I want to do now is I want to just focus. I'm just going to take away the sun and moon and focus on the nodes in sort of broadly indicating the eclipses. And I want to go through the rising signs. So we're going to do them in pairs: Libra, Aries, Taurus, Scorpio, like that. And the point of doing this is to, again, look back and reflect on where we've been in the past year. What have we learned, and where have those lessons landed in terms of the topics of the houses being activated by the eclipses? Hopefully this will get your wheels spinning, and then you can do some meaningful reflecting. And here's what I recommend before we get into it. So what I recommend doing is you have 4 eclipses constellated around April and May and October and November. Now, eclipses don't play out usually on the day of an eclipse. They play out in the weeks and months that follow. So if you think of late April through, say, July, what were the major events that were happening during that time? Don't start by trying to go looking for events that match the topics, because you'll often be too short-sighted in what you're looking at. Start instead by saying, okay, like in this case with these eclipses in the spring, late April through, say, June, July, right around in there. What were the major life events that were happening? What were the big things I remember? What were the themes I was working with internally? Make notes and just elaborate, maybe take a page of a journal and just go. What was happening? Write it all down. And do so without any agenda. Just purely memory reflective work around that time. Then do the same thing from late October through early November up to right now. And you have a little bit of time to come yet. These eclipses are still playing out. What's been happening since late October for you? And do some reflecting and journaling on that. Then what I recommend doing is taking a third page and say right at the top something like meaningful comparisons. What was going on for me in the spring? What lessons was I learning? How have they changed or shifted? How has that learning continued or evolved? Or just make some comparisons. Well, I was thinking about or working with this inside, or these kinds of events were happening. In the fall, it was a little different. It was like this. But just do some comparison, some comparing of both the events on an external level and if there are any connections or not, and then the internal experience of those 2 periods of time. And then afterward, you might even write just a general section like, what did I learn this year? What were some of the most beautiful, interesting things that happened? if you do this with the eclipses, it is as though it's like there's a few presents left under the tree and you haven't opened them yet. And the only way you can open them is if you take some time to reflect on where you've been. I think this is why meditation is so valuable. It's why I have emphasized daily spiritual practices for years. That's what this channel is built on every single day. The content I make is rooted in that. But if you take time to reflect, you will find that gifts emerge from that act of reflection. And eclipses have many gifts to give, but you have to take time with them. It's one thing about eclipses is that they don't just happen. Because they're eclipses, they pertain to the sun and moon's cycle, and 9 and 18 year cycles with eclipses, right? So you have to sit with them and reflect because they are process oriented. They're not those like acute one-off event type of transits for the most part. So they can be, but most of the time they are process oriented and their meaning will constellate around multiple events as well as the internal themes you're dealing with. So take time with it right now. That's my advice. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the eclipses in pairs and just give you some keywords to stimulate that reflection process. Okay, so we'll start with Aries, Libra. Okay, so, whoops. All right, so if you are an Aries rising or a Libra rising, the eclipses have fallen across the 2nd and 8th house axis. Here are some key words, some key ideas to keep in mind as you're reflecting. The 2nd house, 8th house axis has so much to do with what we have, what we cultivate, what we earn, what we develop, whether it's a skill or money in our bank account that we can come to rely on or that can be of benefit to us. That is the 2nd house. Or it is the same kinds of resources, but they are tied intimately to other people and to the relationships and soul contracts that we have with other people. It's also what we give to other people or what we provide for other people, how we are indebted to other people karmically, and how they are indebted to us. So if you think about this axis, there's a lot here around give and take, exchange, reciprocity, what is shared or what is individual, what you have, what you develop, what you cultivate, your energy, time, money, and resources, as well as the debts that you have or the gifts that you give or are given. So if you're Aries rising or Libra rising, reflect on those themes. Have you gotten out of debt? Have you met valuable new allies? Have your relationships and what they give you or what they take from you been a subject of concern or learning? Has your financial reality changed? Has business been a theme? These are the kinds of things that you have been looking at if you are a Libra or an Aries rising, Aries or Libra. Okay, let's move along to Taurus, Scorpio. Whoops, I'm going to flip this around a little bit. Here we go. So for Taurus and Scorpio, we're now talking about the axis of identity and relationships. The first house has a lot to do with your health, your physical appearance, your own personal needs and personal growth and development. The topic of the first house, broadly speaking, is individuation. How am I individualizing? How am I changing with respect to my physical appearance, my taste, my style, my presentation, my personality? How is my psychology the subject of my life this year? How are my personal needs and wants and desires the center of attention? On the other hand, the reality of the others in our lives, those that we love or are in relationships with, the call to grow as a couple rather than an individual, or sometimes with these eclipses, it's about balancing both places at once. Sometimes it is about the 7th house will be about sex. It was a house that was associated with sex. And so sexuality, intimacy, and relationships have also been a major focus for Taurus or Scorpio risings this year. What have you been learning? How has your love life been changing or evolving? Or how have the people, the person or people that you are with in relationships, how have they been growing or changing or evolving? And how has it simultaneously had an impact on you? Have you been holding the tension between your own personal needs and the needs or demands of others? The need to set yourself aside and become more invested in other people rather than yourself. These are the kinds of themes that are seeking expression in your life. That these themes are calling for attention. This is the subject of learning right now. Individuality versus relationships. Your personal body and your growth and evolution as an individual apart from everyone else, and the call of love and relationships to transform you, the needs of other people or the others in your life and how they are changing or growing. All right, let's look at Gemini and Sagittarius next. This places the nodes of the moon in arguably the two most difficult houses of the zodiac, the 6th and the 12th, respectively called bad spirit and bad fortune in ancient astrology. How, for Geminis and Sages, how have your losses, your frustrations, your hardships, your setbacks been the subject of growth this year? If you've been sick, or if you've been depressed, or if you have been frustrated or felt blocked, have you been able to take advantage of a year of troubles and turn them into learning or growth? And maybe not yet, and that's fine. But the growth of eclipses in these houses, it really can't be underestimated. These are often eclipses in these houses mean difficulties, but also powerful levels of transformation. You will often find that conflict with other people, secret enemies, gossip, people going behind your back, as well as your own shadows and demons that you're not always aware of, become an integral part of the story. You may find that you are having to sacrifice, or you are having to learn how to get healthy and clean through incredibly hard work. You may be exploring the topics of what you care about, what you fight for, what you work for. Where are you required to put blood, sweat, and tears into your existence so that you can learn, grow, heal, or develop in some way that you really want to? Excuse me. So consider the labor, the healing, and the challenges of the past year. What have they been? What have you worked through? How have you transformed through meaningful encounters with suffering? That doesn't mean that it's been a bad year, but it could be a year where you were kind of in the labor pains of a new chapter in your life, an in-between state that was difficult, a period of uncertainty, or a period of hardship and setbacks that you had to keep working through. All right, let's move ahead to Cancer and Capricorn. By the way, I lost my voice screaming at the Vikings game on Saturday. Okay, so Cancer, Capricorn. The eclipses for the Cancers and Capricorns out there are falling across your 5th and 11th house this past year. These were two very good houses, one called Good Spirit, one called Good Fortune, and they have a lot to do with the beneficial people and influences. If you think about the 11th house, you're thinking a lot about the way in which groups have been a meaningful part of your growth and development this year. What kind of people, what kind of groups, what kind of social circles have you gotten out of, and have you gotten more deeply involved with? How has your social life changed and evolved? How have your friendships, social circles, colleagues, and broader interests and ambitions changed out in the world? And then simultaneously, how does your pursuit of pleasure, creativity, how has that changed? The 5th house has so much to do with just the pursuit of joy and pleasure, of happiness and creative release. Have you been learning lessons about how to lighten up or loosen up? how to get more deeply invested, or to find meaningful emotional breakthroughs that lead to greater joy or creative release? Have you been figuring out just how to let your hair down and have more fun? Maybe there's been themes also in the 5th house surrounding children or pregnancy. But the 5th house is a house that has to do with joy and creativity. How have you been finding or seeking release in that area, change and growth through that area of life? The 5th house is almost always about your need to feel joy and to be more creatively fulfilled in the way you're living your life. And so those have been major questions for you this year if you're a Cancer or Capricorn rising, along with changes in the social dimension of your life, that social or professional or communal dynamic. So those are the things to watch for in hindsight from this past year. All right, moving along. We are going to put Leo on the ascendant and look at Leo Aquarius. So for Leo Aquarius, the eclipses are coming across the 10th and 4th house axis. So if you're Leo Aquarius rising, eclipses in the 10th and 4th. The career or house that is associated with your public facing identity and the work or activities that keep you busy in the world, so to speak. You know, whether you're a full-time parent or you are, a full-time employee of a company, or you own your own company, or you're retired and have some things that occupy your time and energy. It doesn't matter. The 10th house is sort of like what you stay busy with day to day that define your ambitions, your interests, or your professional life, or something of your engagement with the world. Whereas the 4th house has a lot to do with home, family, and the resting place, the place that you go to relax and the place that you go to abide. So home, family, living environment, parents or family karma, and the workplace. Changes in your professional life or identity, your interests and ambitions, or changes in where you live or how you seek shelter or rest from the world, or changes around family karma or explorations of family karma that are maybe also coming alongside of changes in your identity, your interests, or your ambitions. So that house axis is very powerful when activated. All right, last but not least, let's put Virgo Pisces on the ascendant. And now we're looking at the eclipses falling across the 9th and 3rd house axis, two houses that have a lot to do with the mind. So if you're Virgo or Pisces, the question might be, what are you learning? How is your mind changing? Or how have you shifted your, how have you changed the way that you think, you perceive, you relate, and communicate? How have your beliefs changed, or how have they evolved? What subjects have you learned? What kind of teachers have you had? What kind of classrooms has life provided you with? Sometimes in these houses, it's about meaningful travel that's happened. It's also about opening and changing our mind, being open enough to let people and events change us, change our thinking. So a change or a transformation of consciousness, of mind, of intellect, of belief, religious and spiritual, intellectual, political, ideological changes. Also, again, just basic changes in how we think or talk or relate or perceive. Maybe some meaningful changes that have come into your life through travel, sometimes through the topic of siblings or school, religion, and so forth. So I like to think of eclipses across these houses as the paradigm changers. And often that comes because of new things we're learning, or like people often will start studying astrology with transits like these, eclipses like these, I should say. Or they'll have, almost like a religious or spiritual conversion of some kind. So they're very, very powerful eclipses if you're Virgo Pisces around the axis of mind and learning, travel, and things like that. So in hindsight, these have been the focus areas of the eclipses. And again, I encourage you to look at late April through, say, July, as well as late October through the present, asking the question, what have the major events been, without any prejudice? Don't let the house topics necessarily inform what you look for, because sometimes it's only in hindsight and through a little bit of meditation that you'll see the way in which these events at these times are related to the eclipses. So you have to kind of just let yourself open up and say, okay, what was happening from like late April through midsummer and October up to the present? The autumn eclipses in 2022 may be playing out into the New Year's a ways as well. So just leave room for that. After you have collected some thoughts and feelings, observations about those two time periods, do a little meaningful comparing. After you've done that, maybe just have another little section in your journal where you say, what are my takeaways? The reason that I recommend doing this, I know it sounds like a cheesy exercise, but it's like eclipses are process oriented. If you don't take time to reflect upon them, a lot of the gifts that they have to give you will not appear. It's the same reason that people go to therapy. If you start talking about your life and your experiences, it's the mirroring and reflecting that a therapist does that often delivers so many crucial insights. Well, we can do that for ourselves with astrology if we just journal a little bit. Astrology is like having some timelines, some meaningful timelines to compare and contrast that will automatically give you insight if you take the time to reflect upon them, which is why we try to do this in advance, but also at times in hindsight. It's why it's important when you're learning astrology to not only look at what's happening, but look at transits that happen in the past so you can learn even more from what was happening at a critical period of time earlier in your life. All right, well, that is what I have for today. Tomorrow, to round out the week, I will be doing a review of the significations of Jupiter entering Aries, which has just happened this week. So if you were looking for a little bit more on Jupiter's entrance into Aries, we will be sort of revisiting the archetypal themes of Jupiter entering Aries. All right, that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys are having a good one. Don't forget to check out the link in the description of this video or the comments below to find the Kickstarter. Pitch in and help us reach our goal. We really appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your day.